Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Muslim Marriage Podcast, where we talk about healthy relationships from a Muslim lens. I'm Zara Hassan.
And I'm AJ, and we've been married for 3 years now.
And let's get started.
Let's get started.
On this week's episode, we're going to be talking about how to be manipulation proof. But before we get started, it's very important that we say all of the information presented is intended for people who are single and who are looking for a spouse. If while listening to this episode you are married and you recognize yourself or your spouse in any of the information, please don't take my word for it. I would implore you to speak to someone else, to speak to someone who you love, who is in your life, see what their opinion is, to an imam, to a counselor, to a therapist, somebody trusted whose opinion you can get. And if, God forbid, you are in a situation that is harmful to you, first of all, I'm really sorry that that's happening to you. As we've done on a previous episode about red flags, I'm going to include all the information for resources of where you can go and find help in the description below. But again, the first thing to do is always make sure that you are safe and always use your support system around you of the people that you love and trust. That's the first place that you go. Having said all of that, in today's episode, when we talk about how to be manipulation proof, again, this is intended for people who are single and looking for a spouse. This, In Shaa Allah, we have worked really hard on this so that you have some pointers, some indicators that will help you to distinguish of who's a safe individual and who's not a safe individual for you to take things further with. Does all of that make sense?
Yes, of course. I'm ready. I've been studying for the driver's test, so I know all about pointers and indicators.
All right, here we go. So the way that I've organized the information is that in this part, and inshallah we will complete another part in the future. But in this first part of this series, we're going to be talking about prevention, of how to be able to recognize and see that the person that you're dealing with is potentially a manipulator, so that you have the information that you need to walk away and be safe and stay safe. In the second part of the series, we will talk about if you are already involved with a manipulator. It doesn't have to be in the context of somebody that you're talking to for romantic purposes. It could be a teacher, it could be a boss, it could be a friend. We're going to talk a little bit about how to sort of manage those relationships if you can't leave them, and how to talk to people like that to do as little harm as possible to yourself. In the first part, we're going to be talking about prevention. In the second part, we're going to be talking about management. Hopefully that makes sense. And for people in healthcare, that's the language that they use. That's how I conceptualized it. I'm still good? I'm still making sense?
I just want to let it be known, I already have my full driver's license.
Okay, no one doubted you. You just drew attention to it for no reason, and then no one doubted you, my dear.
There's nothing to be concerned of.
Of course not. Tabarakallah, you've been driving since you were 16?
All your files are exactly where we left them.
Okay. Okay, so if we're now, having said that secondary part, we can now actually get started. So in terms of prevention, right? In terms of being able to see that the person that you're dealing with is potentially a manipulator, the first thing that you need to do is to not be a target, right? So how would you not be a target? Like, how would you make yourself not be a target for manipulators?
You have to be not susceptible to being manipulated, right?
How?
Like, I mean, well, you gotta be able to just be careful and spot the red flags and whatever, you know? Like, a person that's trying to manipulate you, sometimes they get like really physical, and sometimes they'll just get like really social, psychological. You know, they'll try to like boss you around whatever way they can, right? So
Yeah.
The physical presence, if they're overpowering or strong, just in them being there and imposing themselves could be a form of manipulation if they ask you to do something and they give this tone of like it's not really a request, it's more like an order. Psychological, like narcissism, they could demean you, they can downgrade you, they can make you feel worthless, and for attention and for acceptance, approval, you'll be more willing to do what they ask of you, right? Emotional, they can be distant, even if they're not like actively aggressive to you with like verbal cues or anything like that. They can try to give you like the silent treatment or the cold shoulder, and essentially just try to gaslight you without really actually talking to you, make it look like it's your fault.
So it sounds like those are some techniques, right? Those are some strategies and tactics of what they would do of how a person can manipulate you. And I really like the way that you organize them, especially the last part about the silent treatment, that's going to come up a lot in this week's questions. So we keep that in mind. But what I was asking is because manipulators, they don't operate in a vacuum, right? They don't operate in a vacuum. They have certain strategies that they use when they're out and about in the world to be able to recognize, oh, this is somebody that might be susceptible to my tactics, right? Or or they'll be recognized, oh, this is somebody who my efforts will be wasted on, right? So my question is,
I'll be honest though, I feel like, yeah, I understood your question, but I think you were asking the wrong questions, right? So I answered the questions that I thought that you'd want to actually be answered, you know? I really need you to recenter and refocus yourself with regards to asking the right questions.
Are you manipulating me? Is that what this is?
I don't know what you're talking about. Let's just move on.
Okay, all right. Honestly, that worked because I forgot what I was saying. But when you get the target of how to not make yourself a target. So if you've ever watched true crime, right? Or if you've ever seen some kind of documentary or any situation where one person has done harm to another person, and the way that they were able to do that harm is by first manipulating them into a situation they didn't want to be, right? The one and the person is able to survive, and they're telling their story. Their story always begins with, I was going through a really hard time in my life, right? The story always begins with, I was just divorced. I'm going through a divorce. I lost my job. I lost a family member. They're going through some particular difficulty. And what that difficulty does is it makes you vulnerable. It makes you vulnerable. It makes you not, because your core wounds, right? So the ones that were imprinted in you following childhood, or new ones that came after harmful relationships since you became an adult, those core wounds start to be a lot more sensitive. They come a little bit more to the surface. And the problem with core wounds is that they operate at the subconscious level. They don't operate in the conscious level. They operate at the subconscious plane. So what that means is that you're not going to be able to see as clearly. And because what wounds do is they hurt, right? And as human beings, we're trying to avoid hurt. So what you are seeing subconsciously is, how can I hurt less? Right? And when you are in that vulnerable state, you're going to be when you're meeting people on an app or out in real life, and you're having conversations with people, you are subconsciously selecting for conversations or people who are saying things that make those wounds hurt less. Right? So you have a vulnerability. The vulnerability activates some kind of core wound. The core wound creates pain at the subconscious level. And so at the subconscious level, you're going to be selecting for people who make it hurt less, right? They say soothing things. And so I called them soothsayers, right? Soothsayers, because they say soothing things, right? And for those of us who are Muslim, we know that soothsayers is a negative term, is used for people who manipulate through magic, right? So this is like emotional magic. And once you know what you're looking for, you see it all the time. You see it all the time. Once you're able to recognize that this is a real thing that people do, you see it all the time. There is a show, I think we've talked about it before here, Love is Blind, right? Again, terrible show, reality show, don't recommend it at all. But doing what I do, I think I made you watch it, an episode. Do you remember that show?
At one time, yeah.
Yeah, my apologies. But again, it's the doing what I do as a relationship coach. This is something that's very interesting for me. It's fascinating. The premise of the show is that they put men and women in rooms that are called pods where they can't see each other, and they talk to each other through a wall to see whether or not they develop affection and interest enough to be able to get engaged and eventually married. That's the premise of the show. Now, this show is now on its 7th season, and there has become this pattern that people who are on the show gain a lot of notoriety, influence, and in this age of influencers, they gain a lot of followers and potential to make a lot of money, right? Where they have now a public platform that they can use to make money, and they make money off of it all the time. So that means that there are going to be people who come onto the show with the intention of trying to get to the level of getting engaged to someone in order to be to have enough airtime to gain that notoriety, right? So because that, and the way that they're going to do that is by manipulating the other person on the other side, right?
So you're saying some people only go on that show to get famous?
I think most of them at this point, especially on the US version.
What a shocker.
It's really interesting. If you watch the older episodes, there's a little bit more sincerity, but on the later episodes, once you understand that that might be a little bit of their intention, you can see it so clearly in the language that people use to talk to each other. So you have a gentleman, he comes in, and his intention is to get famous. And the way that he's going to do that is by having a storyline where he gets engaged to somebody. He's going to have to convince some woman that I'm in love with you, you're in love with me, let's get married and get the cameras, right? And so you see them looking for the vulnerability points. Like I promise I have a point. We're coming up on the point. You see them verbally checking to see who's vulnerable, right? So they'll put out the same lines. They'll say something like, oh, you know what? I really like your voice. Like they just met them. They'll be like, and they'll say something like, I feel like I've known you forever. I really like your voice. I bet you're beautiful. I bet you get all the. They're looking for vulnerability points and see who it is that responds. Some of the women will clock this. So when they go back to the room with all the other women and they're sharing information, they'll say, so and so is a smooth talker. What they're saying is, he's telling me a lot of what he thinks I want to hear. But because, she's not in a point where this is a sore spot for her, she doesn't need the pain relief of those words, she's able to clock it and move on. For some other women, because they have underlying insecurities that those words that he's saying work for, you can see the words working on her. Right? You can see by the way she responds, she'll be like, oh, thank you. And then she'll respond in a positive way, basically. Right? And then those relationships carry on. It's very interesting on this current season. I could see it happening in multiple couples, but in one couple in particular, towards the very end, I'm not going to give out any spoilers, but towards the very end, one of the couples, she finally clocked it. She finally clocked it and said, I don't believe anything that you've told me from the entire time that we've been here.
Are you talking about Michelle and Roscoe?
All right, those. That's no.
Was I close?
Not at all.
Okay, are they characters?
No, but honestly, I feel like they would be on other shows that, like, I don't know any Roscoes, but I feel like I would want to watch a show that has Roscoe in it. That would be a fun show to watch.
For sure, yeah, for sure.
But In Shaa Allah, you get the point that once you know what it is that you're looking for, you can see it happening in real time. That's how it works, right? That's how the whole idea works, that people are going to be sending out feelers And they're going to be paying attention to your response in terms of your tone of speech, in terms of whether or not you're using open language. And so when somebody says they just met you and they're like, you know what, I think you're really beautiful, right? Which is fair. But if they focus on that, they're paying attention to how you respond to it. So if you're like, oh, thank you, I appreciate that, I think you're really beautiful too. Like, these are all really, hopefully all of that makes sense, inshallah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Therefore, the question becomes, well, how do you manage for that? How do you control for that? And the answer is, first of all, when you're going through a particularly difficult time and you are feeling vulnerable in your life, understand that it's not the best time to be looking for a romantic partner, somebody who you're going to be in close proximity with, who you're going to share your life with, inshallah, and depend on so much on. So when you're going through a very vulnerable moment in your life, be honest with yourself if this is the best time. And I would say do what you can to resolve the issue that are making you feel vulnerable if it's ongoing, to process the pain, to talk to a therapist, to talk to somebody, to be able to come back into yourself and not be a function of your core wounds, right? So that's the first thing you can do, is to not talk to people, right? And instead focus on healing through the trauma. The second thing you can do is, sometimes what makes us vulnerable is just insecurities. There's lifelong insecurities, right? That are not specific to a particular moment. We all know ourselves. Like, I know what my insecurities are. You know what your insecurities are. If you be honest with yourself about what they might be and start to write them down, right? Identify them, name them, and then this is something that I teach to my clients. So maybe find a coach, find a therapist, or start reading books about strategies you can adopt to start to heal through those insecurities. Yeah. A lot of those strategies are going to involve affirmations, right? So I know that after the first marriage, I developed this huge insecurity about my appearance, right? Confident Zahra was no longer confident. So I had to rebuild that up from the ground up. And one of the things that I would do, I know it sounds lame, it feels lame, but I bought mirrors, right, in my little apartment, so that they were at right angles to each other, and I would stand in the place where I could see myself in both mirrors, and I would do like the warrior pose with my hands on my hips, like that. So like that's a superhero pose. And then, and yes, and then just stand like that, looking at myself, and then it feels silly, it feels awkward, but if you do it it really does help. And I would look into my mirrors and I would say my affirmations to target what was specifically bothering me. If I felt insecure because of my glasses, then I would say, I'm very grateful for my glasses because they help me see, alhamdulillah, and I look beautiful in them. And honestly, alhamdulillah. So by the end of it, after working on these affirmations and on these strategies that worked for me, honestly, I came out the other side maybe too confident. Just maybe I had crossed over into a little bit of arrogance, which is fine. But it's alhamdulillah, I was able to, so that when people would talk to me and tell me, you're beautiful, I'd be like, yes, I know. What else do you have to offer? Right. So it helped me to.
I used to do the same thing with the mirrors. So I would put the mirror on my left and then on my right.
Okay.
And the problem is that I got the mirrors from a circus. It wasn't a good idea.
Oh no. All right.
They were funhouse mirrors.
Okay.
I just looked wonky every time.
You should have gone to Walmart like I did. It would have been a lot easier.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
In hindsight.
Okay, that was good. I'll give you that. That was good. That was actually funny. That was funny to me. Okay, but Again, inshallah, that's something that worked for me. It works for a lot of my clients. And it's worth trying out if that's something that you struggle with. But the important thing is identify your insecurities, do the work that you need to develop a strategy, put the strategy into place, and then stick to it. Be consistent with it to program yourself out of the insecurity. So that when people try to use it against you, you'll be like one of those women who's able to clock it and say, yeah, he's a smooth talker. I'm good. You know what I mean? So that you'll be able to hear it when people are trying to just offer you words without any real substance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the first part of keeping your vulnerabilities in check. The second part is about learning to see them, right? Is about learning to see the tactics of people when they're at work, of manipulators when they're at work, right? And the first way to do that is by empowering yourself with knowledge, right? So I spend a lot of time on reading books, a lot of wonderful books that explain some of these tactics, and going on channels. I know a very popular YouTube channel is Dr. Ramani, who specializes in specifically narcissism, but narcissists are just one type of manipulator. Everything she says applies to what we're saying today.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's a lot of information there. You can just type in manipulator into Google. A lot of information there. If you're looking for specific books, I can tell you the ones that helped me a lot. There's one by a gentleman named Jackson McKenzie. He wrote a book called Psychopath Free, right? I found that very helpful. I would do these through audiobooks, so I've listened to it quite a few times. He also wrote a second book called Whole Again. I recommend both of those. The second author whose work helped me is her name is Shannon Thomas. She wrote a book called Healing from Hidden Abuse, where she goes in a lot using her examples of herself of how it is that manipulators work. Because the one good thing about people who are manipulators is that they're not very creative. Right? It's like they
really aren't.
No. It's like they're all reading from the same book, the same playbook, coming up with the same techniques, and very and extremely predictable. So it won't take you long to accumulate some of the knowledge to understand what are the common tactics that they use, so that when you start to see them, you'll be like, oh, I see what you're doing. No, thank you.
Yeah, like once you spot one manipulator, you're able to spot them all pretty much.
Exactly. You'll be like, oh, I know what this is. This is trying.
I'll tell you what.
Yes?
The worst manipulators that I know of are crane operators.
Oh no.
They're the worst manipulators at work.
Okay.
Can you do me a favor? Can you laugh?
Okay. All right, there you go.
Thank you.
There we go.
Don't count that as manipulation, by the way.
No, of course not.
It's not the theme of the show.
No, it's not. At least most of the time. Okay, so that's the first one, is through knowledge, right? That's how you see it, by empowering yourself through knowledge. The second way, it's a little bit unconventional, but I found it to be very useful, right? Because of the way the world is now, there's a lot of scamming that's happening across everywhere, right? If you are trying to rent a house, there's a potential to be scammed. If you are trying to buy a car, there's potential to be scammed. If you're on Facebook Marketplace, if you're trying to get a job, there's all kinds of scam everywhere. And this
if you're trying to scam someone, there's a potential to be scammed.
Honestly, that's very meta. But yes, I agree. There's a lot of YouTube videos of people who scam the scammers, right? So, and definitely this extends to the people who are in the marketplace for the spouse. There's going to be a lot of people who are trying to scam you, right? For whatever their intention it is, whether it's for financial gain, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the way that they're going to accomplish their agenda is by manipulating you, a form of scamming.
Yeah.
So what I do is, whenever I'm interacting with someone new or somebody making promises, like say you've been in a talking stage with somebody for maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and everything seems to be working out fine, you just keep in your back of your head of what would be the gain here. right? What
Yeah.
would be the benefit to this individual of trying to scam me?
Mm-hmm.
And if I was going to get that benefit, how would I do it?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So let me give you an example. A very good friend of mine, she was applying for work, and tabarakallah, she has multiple degrees, very well certified, licensed, degreed and diploma. Mashallah, she's very well qualified for what she does. And she saw this job that was being offered with a salary much higher than what it was that she was expecting. So she applied for it, was very excited. During the interview, before the interview, they gave her a number of questions and they said, can you answer all these questions about our business and what you think about it? And then during the interview, they asked her more questions about their business and what she thinks about it. And then after the interview, they said, we're going to call you back for a second interview. We're going to give you some more questions. So what do you think? Why would they be? Does this sound normal to you? What do you think is happening here?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. What do you think they're into?
They're just trying to long con you.
But what would be the gain? What would be the con? Because they're not asking for any money. Money is easy to spot, but other gains are they take a little bit of creativity.
I feel like I'd fall for their trick.
Yeah, because I think personally that the con here is they're looking to do market research without paying for it. So that they would offer a job, and the only people who would show up would be very highly qualified experts in the field. And this company, maybe it's a startup, is asking these experts, how would you do it? How would you accomplish it? In order to be able to make a tweak on their product and service? I think that's what the con was. And I said, if that is so once you try to identify what the potential gain is, the next step is be like, okay, if I was them, what would be my next step? So I told my friend, I said, okay, if you want, go to the second interview, but you'll know that it's a con if they become more insistent on the questions rather than on the process of hiring you. If they're asking you more questions about the business rather than wanting to know about you specifically as an individual on the nature of the questions. So she went to the interview and they only asked her questions about their business.
Yeah.
So she clocked it and she's like, you know what? No, thank you. Right. So the second way of being able to see is to try to take a little bit of creativity, identify what would be the gain here. What would be the scam? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Another common way is, so for example, some of my clients, tabarakallah, are very professional women, very, very well to do, right? Doing really well in their careers. So they have a lot of money. So there is a potential to be scammed out of the money, right?
Yeah.
So how would you be able to identify somebody whose intention is to marry you for the sake of your money? And this is true for both men and women. The way that if you were that person if you were we'll call it gold digger, just so to make it easier. If you were the gold digger, how would you move?
If I was a gold digger?
Yeah.
Shovel not included?
Shovel not included.
I would try to look the best I could and flatter the person, but also seem kind of coy and distant.
This is true. But a primary concern of the gold digger is to see, is this person going to be willing to spend on me? Are they do they have money like that? And if they do have the money, are they willing to spend? Because, some people are very tight with their money, right? So that would be a waste of time. And how can you test that out? By asking for expensive things.
Hey, yo, I heard you were rich. Get me a PS9.
There you go. They might ask for it. Very rarely will they come out and just say that, but they'll present a situation to encourage you to spend on them. So they'll say something like, "Oh, you know what happened? I lost my phone last week, and it's really sorry. I lost my phone today." And they might be telling, "I'm using my friend's phone, and I'm very stressed out about it because I need it for work, and I don't know what I'm gonna do." So they're gonna present to you a situation and see what you do. Or it depends, but the idea is that they're going to test your ability to spend on them.
Yeah.
Right? So that's how you would be able to identify, oh, this might be what this person's intention is. That might be what the scam is, right?
Yeah.
So it's like that. So the second way of being able to see the scam, to be able to see the manipulator, is try to guess the scam, and based on what you think the scam is, see if their behavior is consistent with it.
I actually had a close encounter with a scammer once.
Oh, just the one time?
Yeah, I wasn't actually quite certain if it was. Even now, I'm still not certain if it was a scam or not. But I was able to get out of that situation. So
Yeah.
it was a woman, okay?
Oh,
And of course, women always target men, you know.
of course, that's what we do.
This person wanted the best for me, right? Or at the very least, it appeared as if they wanted the best for me, and they cared for me, right? And I feel like they genuinely loved me. But I was like, there's got to be an angle here. There's got to be a scam. So I moved out of my mom's house.
I'm so No, not auntie. You're not talking about auntie. I thought you were going to tell me about, I thought you were talking about me, or you were going to ask me directly. So what is your game? What is the scam?
That is your deal.
After the 3 years. But yeah, so it's like, inshallah, it's a little bit of an abstract concept, but hopefully that's a little bit clear, right? So there's two ways that you can see, be able to recognize the scammer, recognize the manipulator is number one, empowering yourself with knowledge. Number two, try to guess the scam. And number three, it's understated, but it's extremely important, is to pay attention to your instincts.
Yeah.
Your instincts have no agenda, right? They are always on your side, and they are very accurate.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people have trouble being able to identify where their instincts are. This is actually something I coach my clients through, right? Because many of the times, you know, if you grew up in a situation where your focus was always outward, your energy was outward, focused on your family and taking care of other people, you get to a place where you're not really concerned about what's going on with you internally, right? So you might this is particularly true for people who develop codependency and such things. They have a very hard time being able to identify their instinct. And even when their instincts are very loud and telling them, hey, pay attention, they're the first ones to invalidate them and say, no.
Yeah.
No. And then they excuse the other person. So it's a skill that you have to learn and to develop. It's something that I went back and learned intentionally on how to pay attention to your instinct. And once you pick up on, once you learn a little bit of strategy and you practice it over time, it's very helpful. What do you think instincts are?
I feel like instincts are some sort of protection.
Mm-hmm. If you had to, if we were trying to explain it in physical terms, scientific terms, like what is it? Like where do they come from? What are they based on? It's
divine protection.
Yeah, definitely. I think that I've seen this explanation before, and I think it's the one that I agree with most, is that when we take information in through our senses, right, through our five senses, primarily through vision and hearing, we're paying attention to when you have your eyes open. Right now, you might just be looking at your phone screen or your computer screen or the road if you're driving, and you're just focused on a conscious level on the thing that you're focused on. But your eyes are seeing everything in your periphery. They're paying attention to the color of the car, two cars to your right if you're on the highway, right? Even though you're not paying attention to it, your eyes have that information. So the amount of information that comes into us through perception, if we say that all of it is together is 100%, maybe 10% of it makes it to your conscious plane. That other 90% is still there. It exists in your memory. It exists somewhere in your brain. I think what your instincts are is all of that information being packaged up and sent to you and saying, hey, There's an irregularity here that you didn't see that you need to pay attention to. Because in addition to the things that you perceive, it also pays attention to things like micro expressions or small imperceptible changes in tone, microscopic changes in tone. And don't forget that your brain still has access to the patterns that happened before in the past with this individual. All of this information of what the person is saying to you, of saying, yes, I do this and I am this. But your brain might be identifying inconsistencies between the information it has access to and what this person is saying to you. So all of that gets packaged up and sent to your subconscious and saying, hey, you need to pay attention. There's an inconsistency here. I think that's what the instinct is. The person who thinks, I've heard that many times from many places. I agree with them that that's what the instinct is.
My body is a well-oiled machine. I'm able to pick up on instincts. I'm able to take micro expressions and turn them into macro aggressions.
Oh, goodness. That's very efficient. But having said all of that, In Shaa Allah, it gives you so just as a very quick review, what we talked about is in your journey to become manipulation proof, right? The first step is to not be a target to manipulators. And that's by dealing with your vulnerabilities and insecurities, right? And either by not trying to meet people when you're vulnerable, or healing through whatever it is that's making you vulnerable and healing through the insecurities. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
The second thing is learning to see the manipulators. And the way that you learn to see the manipulators is number one, by gaining knowledge. And number two, by guessing the scam. And number three, by paying attention to your instincts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully that's organized in a way that makes sense.
You know that old adage that says it takes a thief to catch a thief?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to ramp that up to the notch. Guys, I want you to start manipulating people. Spend about 1.5 years being manipulators and try to be the best you can. After 1.5 years, you'll have all the knowledge that you have in order to avoid manipulation. Be the manipulator you want to avoid.
All right. Okay. I'm not sure if I can co-sign that approach. But that definitely is one way.
Honestly, it's a good idea, right? Don't you think it's a good idea? Come on.
If you think it's a good idea, I think it's a good idea.
Wonderful. Can you co-sign it for me?
It's signed. Sign.
Yes. There we go.
There you go.
See how easy that works?
I cave immediately, which is why it's important that I had all this information to make sure that I don't go into the wrong situations. Okay, having said all that, we're now going to go through the questions for this week. Again, we found them
for the record.
Yeah.
That cosign was not legally binding.
Of course not. Of course not. There was no pen. It was invisible ink. There's so many reasons, so many corny jokes there. I'm just gonna do people a favor and not go through them. But when we go through the questions for this week, I tried really hard to find ones for people who are single and asking the question of, is this potential person I'm talking to, are they a manipulator? Alhamdulillah, those questions don't exist. So these are coming from married individuals. Right, so these are coming from married individuals, but you can start to see some of the dynamics there, right? To be able to identify what it is that's happening. So again, these are coming from the subreddit Muslim Marriage. We'll start with the first one. It's a sister, and she's asking. Sorry, bear with me. She's asking, "Am I manipulating my husband? Am I manipulating my husband?" So she's asking if she's a manipulator. So she says, I, 24 female, sometimes get into little arguments with my husband, who's 32 male. We are both very passionate people, and so sometimes we get into little tiffs. If he gets angry at me, he tends to lean away from me and need space. I'm the type of person where when we argue, I want us to talk it out and smooth out any wrinkles. I understand his need for space, but sometimes he stays silent for so long and it causes me a lot of anxiety. When this happens, I will hide little items that he uses daily around the house. I won't pick them up or change their location, but I will place them in a way that I know he has trouble finding, so he is forced to come ask me where the item is, and he will seek me out, and the post-argument ice is broken. I make a joke to make him laugh. He eventually tells me what it is I said or did that bothered him, and instead of being mad at each other for hours or sometimes days, we are over it in 20 minutes. Am I manipulative for doing this? It seems petty, but it works well. I'm pretty sure he doesn't know that I am doing it, and I don't see any harm. I jokingly told a friend of mine about my little marriage tip, and she got upset with me and told me that it was narcissistic of me to want things to be my way in my marriage, and that it was manipulative of me to force proximity after a fight. So what do you think?
Okay, should I go first or should you go first?
Oh, you go first, my dear.
Okay, so the way I see that, I don't see it as manipulative.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what? Okay, let's backtrack. It's for sure manipulative.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's textbook manipulative, but that's the type of manipulative that's beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's mending the relationship faster than it would normally naturally mend.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the friend who's saying that's narcissism, I disagree. Right.
Yeah.
I think she just found a solution that works for the cohesion of the marriage. Like, okay, sure, he doesn't know that she's the one hiding it, but if he needs a push to speak to her, and then they end up making jokes and then laughing up and making up about it, it's not a bad thing. Right?
Yeah,
I see it as a good thing. That seems like very harmless. Matter of fact, it's helpful from the way I see it.
I mean, everything you're saying makes sense to me. I think this is one of those situations where, in fact, most situations in your life you'll fall in a gray area, right? So it's not going to be a blanket yes or a blanket no. It is or it's not. Technically, it is manipulative because she is achieving a gain by she is achieving a gain against his wishes, right? So that is manipulation, even if the gain is for the betterment of the marriage. Like, you can manipulate people into being better versions of themselves, right? You can manipulate people to their benefit. Whatever is your agenda, the mechanism that you're using to get to that end goal is still manipulation. So technically it is, I in my opinion. But I think that they have a bigger problem here because they're using this as a crutch for communication. What if they have a fight that's big enough that even when she tells him that here's where your such and such is, he's still mad?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
It might not be enough to deal with the issue.
Yeah.
But I think at the very least, for the purpose it's currently serving,
Yeah.
it's more helpful than harmful.
Yeah.
Right? Because it gives them the opportunity to break the ice, right? And it seems to be working out for them.
Yeah.
Sure, she could try different methods. It seems like she has been trying to get his attention.
Yeah.
And he's just been giving her the cold shoulder.
Yeah.
And if she's able to get him to come to her of his own volition, quote unquote, right, unbeknownst to him, then I don't see the harm in it. Matter of fact, I'd like to make a claim.
Yeah.
I'd like to make the claim that everything and everyone in the world is manipulative, right?
Yeah.
Everyone is motivated by either reward or punishment, and if there wasn't one or the other, no one would do anything. You know, we go to work for the reward, and if we don't go to work, our punishment is we don't get to eat, right?
Yeah.
We talk to people for the reward, the social reward, and the punishment is you're lonely, right? Everything you do is for reward and punishment. And in that manner, I think everything in the world is manipulative in that sense, right? So it's just different types of manipulative, different levels of manipulative. But yeah, I think, sure, it's manipulative, but I don't see it as harmful.
Yeah, definitely. Like, it's when we were talking about manipulators at the top of the podcast, we are talking about the ones who have a negative agenda, right? An agenda, a harmful agenda. But again, in this case, it's somebody who's using a beneficial agenda. I think the difference between manipulation and non-manipulation is consent. Consent, right? So, for example, when we're talking about needing to have money in order to buy food, you can scam the money out of somebody as manipulation, or you can make an agreement with them or business deal with them and say, if you consent, I will exchange this for this, and then now I have money and you have this benefit, right? So I think it's an issue of consent, and consent is a function of respect.
The thing is, I think there are some forms of consent that we as a society have deemed it's consent, even though it's not actually technically consent because it's under duress, right? Like everybody works and it seems like they've consented to working, but no, it's under duress. Yes. People don't want to work.
Yes, I agree. That's different. Yeah, I agree. We didn't consent to the current conditions of society. They're just something we have to work within the terms of. Okay, so bringing it back to this specific situation, right, with this brother and this sister. I think that whether or not what she's doing falls under the category of manipulation or non-manipulation, I think in this case it's not really relevant, right? It's not really relevant. I think what's relevant here is why is this the only way they can communicate? Because it sounds like what the brother does is that whenever he's upset, he withdraws and doesn't come back. Right?
Yeah.
He withdraws for a period of days. And even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us that you have 3 days. After the 3rd day, you need to start talking to your loved ones. He withdraws from his wife for a period of days before coming back. And that is a recipe for a lot of difficulty, a lot of pain, and a lot of stress in the marriage. So this is one of those situations where you need to sit down with each other and have a conversation of, when you're upset, what do you need from me? And he'll say something like, well, I need a lot of space to process. And then that's when you come to the agreement of, okay, that's fine. I respect that. How much space do you need? And you have this conversation when you're both calm, right? Not in the middle of a fight.
Yeah.
How much space do you need? And he'll say something, I need a day. And you'll say, like, I think a day is too much. It will start to become very painful for me, right? Because it will feel like that you're now blaming me, and it'll activate this core wound, that core wound. I might feel rejected. I might feel abandoned, etc. A day would be too painful for me, and you come to an agreement. So you and I, when we had this conversation, I tend to be the one that needs time and space. So it's the agreement is I take up to 1 hour, but at some point I come back. Right? At some point I come back, and it's the responsibility is on me as the one who left to come back and to start the conversation of mending the issue. So I know that I get the space that I need, but I have 1 hour. And knowing that
it's always mildly concerning when you come back with the baseball bat. I mean, you don't use it, but why do you bring it?
I mean, just to drive my home across, drive my point home, right? You see what I did there?
Yeah.
Drive my point home. But it's because I know that I only have 1 hour. That means I can't just, which is what I suspect the brother is doing, is I can't just numb and compartmentalize and ignore my feelings. And stay in that state of anger. It means I'm going to have to do something. I'm going to have to process it. I have to journal it out. I have to figure out why I'm angry, figure out what I'm going to say. I have to actually do the work because I only have 1 hour. I don't have days. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you need to have that system set in place between you and your spouse that finds a balance between the one who needs the space and the one who is uncomfortable with the space. In Shaa Allah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have couples where both need space and where one leaves and the other one is perfectly fine and comfortable with that. And all right, that's a totally different situation. But in most marriages, it'll be one needs space and one doesn't need space. Why it's important to set that up is because if you're having this dynamic now during the small fights, this system that of hiding the things and her coming back is not going to work when you need it to work during the big fights. That's going to fall apart. And because
The zombie apocalypse.
yes, and because you haven't set anything in place to take care of that, and your husband is now used to numbing and compartmentalizing, it's going to make things hard when you have children. I don't think they have children. When they have children, that's going to be a challenge. When you're stressed, it's going to be a challenge. So
Yeah.
it's not whether or not she's being manipulative, and I think she is, but this is one of those cases where it's a manipulation that's beneficial for the marriage, right? I'm more concerned about what is it a symptom of, and what does it mean when they have bigger problems. So that's it.
I think the way she asked her question absolutely is weird, right? It's like she's asked the wrong question. It's like saying, "Hey guys, am I driving a car? I get behind the wheel of a four-wheeled vehicle, right? And I go to the store to buy groceries, and I put the groceries in the trunk, and I drive this four-wheeled vehicle back home. Am I driving a car?"
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So based on everything that she said, it clearly is a case of manipulation, and whether or not that manipulation is harmful, I don't think it is. Some people might disagree, right?
Yeah.
I agree with you there. There is an edit where she updated, right? So we'll just go through this briefly because I think it's important towards the end. She says, I read every single comment under this thread. As of writing this edit, there are over 50. I think some people thought this was way more serious than it is, but I still appreciate the feedback. I have never moved stuff around for serious arguments or conversations. It's always been over silly stuff. He is the type of person to go quiet. He doesn't get mad or upset, just quiet, right? And I think that's more insidious. And then he will stay quiet. Even if I communicate with him or bring up a new conversation with him, I think he gets seriously stuck in his head. Also, I should have clarified what I mean by hide his stuff. Last time I did this was 2 months ago, and I took a mug that he loves and moved it to the back of the cupboard. He's taller than me, and I'm pretty sure if he wanted to just find the mug himself, he would. However, someone compared what I'm doing to a situation where my husband moved money to get me to talk to him or withheld my car keys. Obviously, a way more intense situation, but it put everything in perspective for me. I don't think I will be moving his stuff around anymore. One person mentioned the word gaslighting, and that is not what this is. I am not making him question his sanity or taking his belongings away only to make them appear in a spot where he didn't place them to make him feel crazy. I am also not forcing him to talk to me, although I recognize that's the word I used. So when she gave this example of what if her husband had moved money away to get her to talk to him, do you think that's different than what she's doing?
It's a lot more aggressive.
Yeah.
Because that's like it's moving the money in a way that's completely inaccessible, right? So it's not really it's like apples and oranges, you know? Yeah, because the husband, from the sounds of it, is able to find the things that he needs if he just takes a couple more seconds to look for it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, even so, I've had situations like this where I'm looking for something in the fridge, I can't find it, I ask you, you open the fridge, in half a second, you're like, it's right there. And then you point it out, and like, yeah, it's right there. You know? So like, it's very easy to hide things from a guy.
Yeah, you just leave it in where it's been the whole time.
You just leave it slightly next to where it's been the whole time. That's the thing with guys, is that even though it looks like everything's messy, it's all systematically placed that way. And if anyone moves it, it's lost to us until someone finds it for us again.
Yeah, it's not just you. That's true for most everyone in my life. But for me, honestly, it drives me crazy. Things have to be where they go, otherwise it's gonna affect my day, and by extension, your day. But
yeah,
But yeah, I agree. This is a lot more aggressive. I think the difference between moving the mug and moving the money is that the mug is not essential for life, right? For the
Yeah.
money, it's different. It's an actual need. Money is a need in today's society, or car keys. You might need to go to work, right? So it's a lot more. It's you're now actually forcing someone, because even if they didn't
Mhm.
want to talk to you, now they don't have a choice except to come and talk to you. And simply by taking it's, I think aggressive was the right word, because there is some level of consent to not finding the mug, right? Because he could just say,
Yeah.
you know what, I can get a different mug, it's fine, I really don't want to talk to her, I don't want to deal with her right now, I'll get a different mug. So there is some level of consent there. But by taking something that's essential to their
Yeah,
day.
I guess that's debatable. I guess you can argue that. Yeah, I guess yeah, I guess that is arguable.
So that's
I wouldn't necessarily use the word consent there, but I understand what you're saying. Yeah, you got this off of Reddit, didn't you?
the question. Yes.
Yeah. So a lot of people on Reddit, from what I've seen, I don't use Reddit anymore. Last time I had it was like 2 years ago. They're all very aggressive in their morality, even though they don't really have much of a morality, right? It's all subjective from person to person. You saw the post that came out recently about all these Redditors that had MRIs, and it showed just like parts of their brain just missing.
SubhanAllah. I mean, MRIs are expensive. Everybody went through an MRI.
Yeah, people had MRIs,
Yeah.
right? Not everybody, but people had MRIs, and just everyone just sort of has chunks of their brain missing, and they're all on Reddit. And I'm like, okay, so that there's a connection here,
Okay.
right?
I mean, I'm on Reddit.
They take that idea of liberalism too far, where it's like you can do whatever you want as long as you're not hurting yourself or hurting others, right?
Yeah.
And that's the only morality that they have, and they don't have anything else, right? So like, sure, they're gonna attack her for that, right? And they're gonna be like, his choice, his autonomy, this, that. But with husband and wife, right? You've signed a contract that you will help the person and you'll stop them from doing evil, right? Like you are, as a Muslim, obligated to stop someone from oppressing others, right? And to not oppress others yourself. And this hasn't ever happened in our marriage. But if a man is eating a woman's food and the woman's food tastes bad, he can lie and say, "Yeah, it tastes good."
Yeah.
You know, to build the cohesion, keep the marriage cohesion. If someone went on Reddit and said, "My wife's food is not very good tasting, but I lie to her and I tell her the food is good tasting," I can promise you, majority of the people in the comment section would be like, "Bro, you're gaslighting her, man. You should get her divorced. You should divorce her. You're hurting her feelings. Just divorce her, man. Just end it, man. It's going to hurt less."
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. And honestly, it's not just Reddit, it's most of the internet. If anyone who exists on the internet understands that the comment section tends to people have very strong opinions. Right? People have very strong opinions. But I tend to focus on the questioner themselves, because people are, especially when they're using anonymous accounts, and that's what most of the questions that I'm asked, that I'm presenting on the podcast, are people who are using anonymous accounts. They're very honest about their situations because they're genuinely looking for help, right? Looking for perspective, especially if they don't have the resources in their own lives. And I understand that.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those situations where people who, when people are hurting, when people are experiencing a negative emotion, right, they will tend to be online to look for help for those negative emotions. That's why so much of the content on Reddit, across most of this advice subreddit, are going to veer towards the negative, right? And it's definitely not representative of the population, right? The same people who are
100%.
same people who write one comment here or one piece of advice here on the subreddit might present totally different in real life, right? They might have a totally different opinion in real life. So these are just some truths of the internet that we accept. Having said that, I think that what we said before stands, that this is an issue. I mean, it might not feel very big. I would be very interested to know what they do, what other tools that she has in her toolbox of when fights or arguments are bigger. Like, what do they do? Do they talk it? Like, those would be the questions that I would ask. If she's leaning only on this, or a lot of the patterns are still there during bigger fights, it's just longer periods of silence, then that's something that needs to be solved right away.
You know what she should do?
Mm-hmm.
She should buy nicotine patches.
Okay.
And every time he's having fun and talking to her,
Okay.
she should apply a nicotine patch to her only when he's enjoying conversation with her, right? And then when they finish talking, she just sneakily removes it from him.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, he's going to misunderstand his addiction to genuinely want to talk to her.
Is that what all these patches are on my arms?
You weren't supposed to notice those.
Yeah. Eventually I saw them. But let's move on to the second question. The second question is a little bit more involved, right? It's a little bit more negative. And a trigger warning for people who struggle with fertility. But I think it's an important example to be able to differentiate of what it can look like when things are more serious in a marriage where manipulation is an issue.
Yeah.
Okay. So this question is again by a sister. She's asking, is my husband manipulating me? She says, hi, salam. I've had my fair share of getting advice from this group. I appreciate you all. If you see my post history and wonder why I haven't left yet, I don't know. Deep down, I'm waiting for that year mark to hit and catching on breadcrumbs he gives me every now and then. On today's dilemma, I'm not sure if this is manipulation, but my husband has been silent for weeks now. When I ask him, he says nothing, or I don't want to talk about it. I've managed to just let it be, and honestly, it doesn't bother me as much as it used to. I've noticed changes in how he treats me. Mind you, I do everything in the house. I take care of literally everything. He comes, sleeps on his phone, and then goes to work. I even pack his lunch. He used to get me flowers, hang out with me, take me on dates, but all that stopped. He is having issues with me going on birth control when he forced it down my throat to begin with. When I took the step and got it, he said, I feel worthless because I'm not getting what I got married for, i.e. a child. It's been a month and he has been throwing hints about wanting a child only after I went on the birth control. When I wasn't on the birth control, he said, and I quote, I don't want to have a child ever. He flip-flops. He used to care for me before, sit by me, take care of me, but all that stopped. Something threw me off last night. I kept saying I'm nauseous and he went to bed. I was okay. It was on and off. At some point, it got so bad I threw up. He heard that and came to the bathroom to ask what's going on. And I just said to him, I told you I'm nauseous. I wash up and sit in the living room. He stands on the side and asks if I need something. Do you need something from me? And he looked annoyed, like I've inconvenienced him. This man used to sit in the bathroom with me and hold me, and now he stands 10 feet annoyed and asks, what do you want? And I ask him, I need you to sit with me and hold me. He goes ahead and says, for what? That puzzled me, and I say, you used to do that. What do you mean for what? And he says, well, the last time I thought you were pregnant. And without thinking, I said, you're standing 10 feet when I needed you. You stopped doing every nice small gesture you used to do, like you have fallen out of love with me. Then he says, why are we talking about this? I got up from bed to check on you. And I'm just like, you only care for me if I'm pregnant, but not if I'm not. A few weeks ago, he went a whole week when I was sick, just ignoring me. When I bring it up and say, hey, I want you to even ask how I'm doing. Like, I live with you and you see me going to work, coming home, taking care of the house, but I don't even get, how are you feeling? Every time I tell him exactly what I need, I get him saying, what do you want from me? I don't know if this is his way of wanting to manipulate me. He already does all the gaslighting. I started a journal to write everything that I can and will be used against me so that I remember the factual details. Otherwise, he will say, see, you don't remember, so it never happened. I don't know how to get out of this hole. Please advise. So what do you think is going on here? I know it's a lot.
First of all, I just created a Reddit account. I think they should get divorced.
Okay. SubhanAllah. All right. So is that the real life opinion or is that the Reddit opinion?
At some point in time, did you say he shoved a birth control down her throat, or is that just a turn of phrase?
I think she's using a turn of phrase. I think what she's saying is that he persuaded her, or really told her that's what he wants. When
unfortunate choice of wording.
Yes, I know. But given the situation, especially that episode where she was very nauseous and he wasn't supporting her the way that he used to in the past. What do you think is happening in this relationship?
It feels like their infertility is by choice.
Well, yeah, but this might be something that that can be a trigger for people who struggle with fertility, because that's the issue here. It's about fertility.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
So she wasn't on birth control, and he was like, my progeny, I want children, give me children.
Yeah.
But then she went on birth control, and he said, well, wait, hold on, no, it's the opposite.
Yeah, it's the other way around.
When she wasn't on birth control, he said, I never want kids.
Yeah.
So then she went on birth control, and then that's when he started spazzing out and went, my progeny.
Yeah.
And then now, all of a sudden, he's like angry with her for doing what he wanted.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, that's weird. No, I don't get that. I don't get the guy.
Yeah.
Also, if she has what appears to be morning sickness, right?
You never know, but then people are nauseous for a number of reasons. You never know,
of course, but you would think that the first thing he would be like, oh, she's pregnant, you know?
No, but that's actually the issue, right? Because right now, because she's on birth control, he knows, he's thinking, okay, she's definitely not pregnant. She's just nauseous because she's not feeling well. So he's saying, before, when I used to take care of you, it's because I thought you were pregnant. And now that I know that you're likely not pregnant, you're annoying me. Like, he didn't say you're annoying me, but that's the impression that she got.
When I thought you had intrinsic value to me, you know?
Yeah.
When I thought you were the vessel for my child, I cared for you.
It's extrinsic. Yes, I agree. So I think a number of things are going on. So whatever a client comes with situations like these, I look at it's rarely the situation, right?
Yeah.
What we're looking for is, what is the underlying issue? What is the situation pointing to is a pattern in this relationship, right? Yeah. So if we go through the two situations, which is the birth control and then the episode where she was nauseous and he didn't really help her. With the birth control, he's creating a situation where she can't win.
Yeah.
And if we asked her about other situations in her marriage, you would probably come up with a pattern of multiple times where there's circumstances where she feels that she can't win with him. She can't win.
Yeah.
So, for example, in addition, I'm always completely extrapolating and coming to huge conclusions based on very little information. So there's a good chance I'm completely wrong. But I'm using the examples here to illustrate larger points that might be useful to the people. So just be patient. Yeah. Bear with me a little bit. So in this kind, a case like this, we might find similar situations. For example, he'll say that, you know what, I really like lasagna. And then she'll make lasagna. And he'll say, I don't know why you made lasagna. Right? I don't really like that. I really like biryani. Right? So you can't win. Right?
That would annoy me so much.
Yeah. This is a very simplistic example, but a larger example of he's saying clearly, because people tend to be fairly rigid, at least over the short period of time that is implied here. that I really, really want children, or I really, really don't want children. Most people don't flip totally. But even if he did flip totally, right? Let's say that he came into this marriage knowing for sure that he wasn't ready to be a father, and he said, I'm not ready to be a father. And they agreed that it's not what happened here, because it sounded like that he was very aggressive in the way that he asked. So she just accepted it. But let's say they had a health.
Especially because birth control, it wreaks havoc chemically.
Absolutely. It's not something easy. So let's say that they had a conversation and they agreed that that's what would happen. And then something happened. He went to a friend's house where they had children, and he changed his mind and he decided he wanted to be a father. That would require you coming back home and speaking with his wife and saying, you know what, I want to thank you so much for taking this big sacrifice for me. I appreciate it. But on second thought, like, I now feel differently, like, to have a conversation that way, right? Where it's first of all, acknowledging the sacrifice that she's making and validating that. And then now presenting your new opinion or your new need, right? And then in a collaborative way, coming up with a new plan of action. And all of this is presented in a way that is respectful. That's what's missing here. It's respect.
Yeah.
Is respectful. So none of that happened, right? So instead what he's doing is that he is presenting the presence or lack of children, or the presence or absence of children, as something that is her fault. Right. And I'm not really sure whether or not consciously he even cares about the children. The primary goal is to create circumstances where she can't win, because the goal is that feeling of creating that feeling in the partner of them not being able to win with you. That's the goal. The goal is not the presence or absence of children. The goal is creating the negative feeling in the partner. Again, I might be coming to huge conclusions, and I know I am, but this is how. I'm not saying the brother is, but I'm saying if a manipulator, a totally different person who is a known manipulator, had these set of circumstances, that's how he would be thinking, right? The goal is to create that.
I've got the solution.
Okay.
I've got the solution for her.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So she can stop taking her birth control pills, right? And she can begin a new birth control plan. Starts with the letter C, ends with the letter M. You know what I'm thinking of?
No.
That's right. A conundrum. She needs to confuse the heck out of him.
Okay. All right. Sure.
It'll work. Trust me, it'll work.
It'll work. It'll work. She'll be too confused to know what's happening. They'll both be confused, my dear. But that's the first situation. The second situation, right? She's using it as an example, and always keep in mind we only have one side of the story, etc. We don't know what's going on with the brother. Again, this is just illustrative. But in the second situation, she's talking about two things. The first is where she states her need. All right, she states her need. My need is I need a little bit of affection right now. I need to feel that I'm important to you. I feel like I'm valuable to you. She
told him that immediately, though. Like I think she already did tell him that outright.
Yes.
She's like, back in the day, you used to.
I agree.
Hold me.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
And he's like, I thought you were pregnant back in the day.
Yes, right? I'm saying yes. But what I'm saying is that's what happened, where she stated her need to feel worthy and valuable to him. When she states her need is he dismissed it. He's dismissed it by saying, why are we talking about this? This is not an issue. So it's that feeling of not being heard, not being appreciated, not being valued. That's the first thing that's happening in that scenario. The second thing to drive that home is to let her know, not only do I not value your opinion, I also don't value you. Because the only reason that I was affectionate in the past is because I thought you could give me something that you now can't. Right? So it's this whole dynamic of really wanting her to know that I don't value you, don't respect you, but I also primarily don't value you. So the first negative feeling in the first example was, you can't win with me. I'm going to stay the victim of the things that you do. You cannot win with me. And the second negative feeling is I don't value you. Right? So that's the two, these are two techniques that are illustrated by these two examples. And the cumulative effect is that you don't feel stable in your interactions with him. You're not quite sure what is the thing to do. And you're not quite sure how to meet his needs, which is in the first example. You're not quite sure how to meet his needs, because if you try to meet his needs, he'll tell you you failed. And in the second example, you don't know how to state your needs, because if you try to state your needs, he'll remind you that your needs don't matter, neither do you. Right? Yeah. So these are the two things that are shown here that really make me concerned for the health of this marriage. And when somebody is feeling unstable like this, where they're not quite sure what to do, over a prolonged period of time. I don't know if they said how long they were married. I don't remember, but over years, a period of years, it starts to change your perception of how you see yourself and how you understand reality. And when your perception of how you understand reality starts to become challenged, a hallmark of people who are in that state of mind is that they start to try to record things. They start to record conversations, they record, they videotape, not because of, and she said that she wants to, not because they're looking for evidence to be used against the other person. They're really not interested in that. They're looking for proof that their perception of reality fits in with objective reality, right? That they're saying things accurately, that what they saw happened, that what they heard happened. Right? They're just desperately looking for anchors to say, hey, what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing is accurate. Right? And that's what was illustrated. Like, that's what we saw at the very end, where she said, I started a journal to write everything that can and will be used against me, so that I remember the factual details. Otherwise, he will say, see, you don't remember. So it never happened. See, her intention is for her to be able to have anchors and say, look, what I saw was real. What I heard was real. So this is a hallmark of somebody who is in a situation where their reality, their perception of reality is being challenged, right? So this is an example. If somebody is suspects that they're going through something like this in their real life, again, first of all, my heart goes out to you. That's tragic. It's always sad when it happens. Many clients come to me who are in situations like that. Sometimes I can help them, and sometimes it's way above my pay grade and way above what I know to help. So my advice is always the same. If you are married to somebody like this, first and foremost, make sure you're physically safe. Secondly, don't take any of my words. Go and find somebody that you trust and love in your life, and have a conversation with them, and let that be the place where you find advice. Not from me, not from anyone on the internet. But if you don't have somebody like that in your life, we're going to post some resources in the description below, so that at least you have a starting point from people who are trained.
So I'm going to use the favorite catchphrase currently of Piers Morgan.
Okay.
I have a moral quandary.
All right.
With regards to this woman and her husband.
Okay.
They don't have children, from the sounds of it. Right?
Yeah, I think so.
And it seems evident that he doesn't love her.
Yeah.
Right? Whatever love is there is conditional, very conditional, it seems. Mm-hmm. Is it better for them to go through marriage counseling and try to reignite that passion and hope it stays? Or would it be more beneficial for her and him, I suppose, because if he doesn't love her, it's going to be a difficult marriage for him as well. Would it be more beneficial for them to get divorced? What I do know is that the most hated thing that's still halal is divorce. So that's my moral quandary.
I think that it's not for either of us to say. Like, I have never had a situation where a client came to me. Sometimes it's at this level, sometimes it's more difficult. where I tell them that I think that you should be divorced, because it's absolutely not my place to say. I think that the only place where they can get the information from that are from the people who love them, from their own selves, from their own judgment, right? And to what my role is a coach. And I think also by the role of therapists, counselors, and even imams is to make sure that the person has enough information to be able to make that decision for themselves, right? So our job is to try to translate what we see in a situation that might be going on. I don't think that this is an issue of love. I think this is an issue of capacity. My question is whether what I would be wanting to know is this gentleman, and again, we're extrapolating a lot based on the situation. We don't know what his side of the story is. We don't know most things. We only have a few paragraphs. But my question that I would be looking for just with this information is, does this gentleman have the capacity to be able to engage and build an actually healthy, happy marriage? Sometimes people don't have that ability and they don't have that capacity. And that's why I taught whenever I have single clients and whenever we talk about topics directed to single people, the one of the most important things you're looking for is whether or not the person has the capacity to build that relationship with you. Overall, what is the indicator of capacity that I always ask is, does this person care about your well-being? In this case, at the end, I don't think he does. Based on this, I don't think he does.
Yeah.
Because there's a direct example where she's not feeling well and he's telling her, I don't care about your well-being.
Yeah.
Right? So if somebody doesn't care about your well-being, that person doesn't have the capacity to build a healthy relationship with you. Now, again, whether or not they should pursue divorce is not for me. And in my opinion, it's not for anyone to decide, except her and him. And the job of the professionals is to make sure they have the enough information to make that decision. And I always advise my clients, if you need help coming to that decision, go to the people that you love. Go to your parents, go to your aunts, uncles, sisters, the ones who have your best interests at heart and have more information about the situation because of their proximity to you than any professional, right?
You can also go to the Fudge Brownie. So I actually had you say something where you said, for your clients, you'll never say divorce as the answer.
Yeah.
However, I'm going to challenge that.
Okay.
What if you get a Star Wars fan who asks you the superpower that Jedi and Sith Masters use? What do you call it? What would you say?
I would say I don't speak English.
You're wrong. It's called the Force.
The Force.
I feel like you would use that answer, and I think I got you there.
You did. You did. I feel like those
That's
were
right.
It's exactly the same.
Also, I think that man must have pretty big hands. He could probably do very well in basketball.
Yeah.
Big fingers, because he's a big manipulator.
Oh, there you go. That's a really good one. I like that. But I think that brings us to the end of the information that we wanted to present here today. Inshallah, it was clear. Is there anything that we missed?
No. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
So those were. So in the future, we might do a part 2 to this section where we talk about if you already have somebody in your life. And when I say somebody, I don't really mean somebody that you're married to, right? Because if you're in a situation where the techniques are really meant to keep the peace, right, rather than to build a healthy relationship. So the techniques that we would discuss in part 2 of that the podcast, if we were to pursue it, are for people not in a romantic relationship with you, like your neighbors or your employers or your employees, or just people who are a degree of a separation from you, not people you're in an intimate relationship with you. So we might go through that simply because I think it's useful. But even though it's not directly related to relationships, right? Inshallah. But I think that's it. That's all the information. So
I'm gonna take the reins here before we finish. What I want from you at this stage, I want you to begin your closing remarks, and we'll be able to wind down the podcast. Maybe plug in your channels, maybe like the Discord or the YouTube or anything else, like your coaching business, right? And finally, at the end, we'll both say goodbye.
All right.
Go ahead, take it away. This is not manipulation.
No, I was gonna do something totally
okay, you
different.
can talk now.
I was gonna do something totally different, but I think I like your approach better. We'll do it that way.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So we want to say, Jazaa K'Allah Khayr. I do have a free webinar called Dating App Strategies That Actually Work. So if you are looking for somebody using the matrimonial apps and you're a little bit overwhelmed and you're not sure what to do and you're a woman, again, feel free to reach out and I will send you a link for that free webinar. I think those are all the things. Thank you so much, Jazaa K'Allah Khayr, for being a part of this community. It's growing. We are over 100 subscribers in a relatively short time now. We really appreciate every single one of you. Jazaa K'Allah Khayr. If you haven't subscribed, please do. It really helps us out.
And you were invited to a podcast, weren't you?
Yes, I was. I was very fortunate, alhamdulillah, to be invited to a podcast by Hiba and Zaid, who are owners of Halal Match, which is a wonderful matchmaking service for Muslims. They have a podcast called Diary of a Matchmaker. Their episode is coming out, I think, on October the 18th. So by the time you're hearing this, it should already be out. I will post links of that into the description as well, In Shaa Allah. And you can also find links on my Instagram page at Zahra Hassan Coaching. I think that should be everything.
Yes, indeed. Congratulations. You're doing so good. You actually have collaborations now, and you're making it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
We've been making but thank you. Jazakallah khair. I appreciate it. Alhamdulillah. So that's everything. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much for making it this far. I hope you have a great week. We'll see you next time. Wassalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.